Okay, and welcome to week 9 of this wonderful venture we're doing called television. And we're going to pick up on editing this week. And last week, talked about the basics, and we're going to recap those briefly. And I want to make sure that we fully understand what we're getting ourselves into. Because, again, this is just a wonderful thing, and I want to make sure that you all take advantage of it and enjoy it, because I didn't have this when I was starting out, I can tell you that right now. All right, so what we're going to talk about today is another dimension, literally another dimension of video editing from what we talked about last week. And that is basically looking upward. So, well, to go with a recap first so that you can put this in context. Non-linear video editing, we call this non-linear because it's not in a line. Now, let me explain quickly what that means in case I didn't quite cover it properly last time. If you were editing tape, you would have to record a piece of video here, then here, then here, then here, and whatever happened back here, is stacked up behind all these new edits. And so when you rewind the tape to get to this point, you can no longer remove this edit, because if you do that, you have to cut the tape literally, and you cannot cut videotape. And so as a result, that was called linear editing. And so, if it's like you got these box cars, on a train system, and you got them stacked up for miles, it's very difficult to go back and remove a car that's way back over there. The only way you could do it is replace it with a scene of exactly the same length, which is almost impossible to do. Or you got to redo all the edits that come after that, which is a real hassle. In fact, that was a great way of getting the client to back down when they wanted to make a change. Well, if we do that, we're going to have to re-edit everything we did yesterday. It's like, well, all that work we did yesterday, we have to do again? Yeah, at $150 an hour. And so that usually ended the argument. But with nonlinear editing, we're not really stacking video edits in a line. What we're doing is we're playing back sections of video according to a list. And so basically, to remove a scene from somewhere in the middle, all you're really doing is telling the computer to avoid playing that, and it automatically seals that up. In that regard, it's very much like film editing. With film editing, you can cut film, and so yeah, you can take whatever you want out of a reel of film and just tape the two other ends together. And so we sort of, in some ways, we corrected a problem with the electronic technology. But nonlinear video editing is basically unlimited. The other factor there, which is something that I probably did mention, is that if you were, hypothetically, let's say you were unlucky enough to be editing on tape, and I can remember this, where you literally had reels of tape. They weren't dealing with cassettes. And every once in a while, somebody would awe everybody by bringing in a 2-hour reel. It's like, wow, I've never seen one that big. And so it's like a dinner plate or like a serving platter. And they put it up on the machine, and everyone's afraid to touch it because they've never seen something that big. And that's because whenever you edit on a videotape, you're limited to the size of the tape. And so if you're editing a program that's 90 minutes long, you darn well better have a 90-minute master reel loaded in there, otherwise you're in trouble. Because what will happen is you'll get to that 60th minute mark. Let's say you got a 60-minute reel in there. You get to the 59 minutes, and the next edit, suddenly the tape slips off the spool, and it goes whack, 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 whack. And then the client says, what the hell happened? And then you say, oh, well... so that's literally a problem. And then plus, look at cassette formats. If you're editing on Betacam or VHS, let's say, you can't go beyond whatever the length of the tape is there. So as a result, there was a natural limit. Whereas with non-linear video editing, there really is no limit. The hard drive's the limit, which basically means you could probably put a few months of footage onto your hard drive. You could probably have almost an infinite amount of time available for your master. Not that you would necessarily want to do that, but in theory you could. You don't really have to worry about running out of time. Now, digital files have no shelf life. They don't lose quality. Whereas, let's face it, almost everything else does. Film changes color over time. And videotape rots. It literally falls apart. Now, unfortunately, that sometimes is also true of digital storage media as well. But as long as the information is constantly moved or backed up, you're generally all right. And because editing is virtual, no real limits exist, which also means not only do you have a basically unlimited amount of time that you can edit, but you also don't have to worry about being limited to physical tape. For example, when you're editing on physical tape, you would have about 2 audio tracks. Generally, you would have 2. Every once in a while, someone would say, oh, well, this tape format gives you 4 audio tracks. Well, big improvement. But with digital audio, you can just keep stacking audio forever. You know, there's no limit to how many pieces of audio that you can blend together at one time. It'll just keep going. And the same thing is true of video tracks. You can have as many layers of video that you want, which is what we're going to talk about today. And the basics of any video editing program are always the same. Now, this is where I come out and basically ease your minds about whatever you're learning. Now, on one hand, we're learning the Adobe system, which is probably the most commonly used video editing software that exists. And one of the reasons why it is because it's cross-platform. You can use it on a Mac, you can use it on an IBM, and so this gives you a basic coverage of everything. Now, every once in a while, someone's going to say, well, I like Final Cut. Well, fine, you can use Final Cut. You know, you can also use some of these other ones, whatever you happen to find. And we use several of these. But of all of them, they all basically have the same units. And so if you're used to working with one, generally you can become used to working with another. So first of all, every one of these programs has some kind of project window. You have some place where you can see your video clips. And there's something like a timeline. You have a timeline where you can see shot, 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 and see how that works. And you have a video monitor where you can play back what you've done and see where it is in relation to the other shots. Hopefully you have those things. And then you have some means of controlling and adding effects. So all video editing programs have those components. If you can understand where they are and learn how to use them, it doesn't really matter what program you're using. Okay, so today we're going to talk about the concept of keying, which has to do with layering video. So basic video editing, we fill the timeline from left to right. In keying, we're talking about stacking video on top of video, which is in some ways a very different thing. Putting one video over another covers the video below. So basically you are covering the video. So it's almost like removing the shot. You're putting one shot over another so that you can no longer see this shot. Now, the Adobe program and most others are always looking down. Now, I say that because the new tech version of video editing, which is no longer sold, was the opposite. The new tech looked up from the bottom. And that's what I originally learned on as a nonlinear editing program. And all the others looked down, so that was one of the weird things. It's like, well, that you do have to get used to, because if you make a mistake, that's, of course, you'll learn pretty quickly, but it can be annoying. Now, keying refers to a keyhole. It's like, if you can remember, back in the early turn of the century, the big keys that people would carry, the little long skeleton-like keys, and then a door would have a keyhole, and some of the earlier ones you could peek in through the keyhole. You could see what's going on in the room, and so that's where this came from. And so the idea of keying involves cutting a hole in the video and looking through it to something below. And how you cut the keyhole determines how the key works. So that's basically the concept. You've got one video over another, and you're looking through it through some sort of a keyhole. And so the first type of key I wanted to mention is called the alpha channel key, or the alpha key. Now, this is, by all types of keys, my favorite. The only problem is it can only be used under certain situations, and this is basically for graphics. An alpha channel key only applies to graphics. And so basically what it does is it relies on something called an alpha channel, which is part of a graphic file. So for example, let's say that you're using a character generator and you type a letter A. The letter A gets created, and also with that, which you never see, is a little shadow of the A, which is also created, and that's the alpha channel. And so when you go to key that, basically what the program will do is it will take that alpha channel, which cuts a perfect shape of the A, and then it'll slap the A right over that, and that will basically give you a perfect key, which is wonderful if you can do that. Okay, works every time. You know, this is a great piece of work, easy to use because generally you don't even know you're using it. So with your graphics programs, that works. Now, it also takes advantage of 32-bit graphics. And so if you have a graphic image of anything, let's say a picture of a globe of the Earth, let's say, then that will have an alpha channel built into it if it's 32-bit. Because if you're making a graphic in a graphics program, generally there's a black background or a white background, doesn't actually matter. Then the graphic itself got its own alpha channel. If it's 32-bit, you take it into your video editing program, it will ignore the original background because there was none, and it will perfectly key that over what you're looking at. Wonderful. Okay, so if you don't use 32-bit, if you use 24-bit, let's say, then it will take the color background, black or white, whatever it is, and it will lay that over as well. And if you actually want to key that, you'll have to magic wand it and get rid of it. So I wouldn't necessarily recommend going that route. Always use 32-bit if you intend to key, simply put. Okay, another types of key, we're going to put a bunch of them into this category because they can be rather annoying. I'm just going to call these manual keys. You can cut a hole in a graphic or picture with any tool that you want. For example, you can use the magic wand tool. So let's say you've got a picture of the American flag and you want to key out the white. You can just use the magic wand tool, hit something white, and look at it. You'll see a dotted line over any area that it finds it's white. And then you can hit the delete button and you'll have that opening there. You know, whatever colors we're talking about doesn't matter. And then that will be the shape of the color. If you've got a picture of a silhouette, for example, you can cut the white out of it and then turn that into some sort of a logo graphic. Cropping left and right. Basically, you can key one video over another and basically pull down the top part of that video so you can have the lower half keyed, left or right, up or down, doesn't matter. You can also use transparency. Now, this is a more common approach. It's kind of like a half dissolve, where you move the lever of the switcher halfway, or you turn down the opacity down to 50%. And that gives you the ability to have two pictures that are seen simultaneously. So you can have someone say, oh, I can remember when. And then suddenly you can see like a dissolve to a field of grass with someone running and all kinds of wonderful things happening. And they're still going like that. You know, really, really sappy stuff. And you can do that. And so you can run that as long as you want. And you can even stack as many of those as you want over each other and keep doing that. Eventually, it just becomes a blur. You know, that's how people do dream sequences and stuff like that. Now, blending options are a little bit more complicated because that's where you can tell the system, don't just do a halfway dissolve, but have it based on color intensity or have it based on darkness only or the difference between colors. And there's a whole number of blending modes, most of which are kind of weird. It's like if you're actually doing this, I have tried to learn exactly what each of them does, and I have some idea. But honestly, what I end up doing every single time is just looking at it, going to the next one, looking at it, going to the next one, saying, that's the one that I like. And so, you know, obviously it'd be better, you know, to do it more strategically, but it's just not made that way. Okay, so Chroma Key. Chroma keying is a popular one. And this is very widely used under certain circumstances. Basically what this does is it cuts a hole using color. Okay, so you have the green screen. Now, it used to be a blue screen a long time ago. I can remember when it was blue. But it's green screen. It doesn't matter really what color it is. You're standing in front of it. And then a person who is standing in front of the green screen appears to be somewhere else. Or they appear to be standing over a magical weather map. And so they can point at the clouds and stuff like that. And people say, wow, that's incredible. And so, yeah, it used to be really incredible until you understand how it's done. Because basically, they're standing in front of a green wall. And then you tell the computer to look for anything that's that particular shade of green and cut a hole in the video. And behind that piece of video, you've got the actual green graphic, or the actual green screen graphic, which is the weather map. And so the person appears to be standing over that. And so obviously it's a beautiful piece of technology. It can be overused though. So the green is deleted and the image behind it is revealed. Very commonly used. Now if the person is wearing green, well, crap. You know, if the person's got a green tie, you will see a hole in their chest. If a person has a green hat on, the top of their head's going to be cut off or something like that. And of course, you have people doing this deliberately. If you're doing a puppet show, you may wear a green suit and you can talk to these puppets that you're literally controlling, and that works out quite well. And so the possibilities are endless. And Luma keys are basically the same thing. If you have a luminance key, really that's looking for light or dark. You can key it either way. Don't do it. It's a really bad type of key. Almost never works. Every once in a while, you use it because that's all you got, but the Chroma Key has become so easy to use. If you're going to do a key, do it that way. Okay, now another type of key is picture-in-picture, which is relatively new, believe it or not. And I say relatively new because this simply could not be done easily in the days of videotape. Really what this is you take an image, this is one layer, and then you take your upper layer and shrink it down so that it doesn't cover the entire lower layer. And so you can have a video up in the upper right-hand corner that's playing, and so you got your anchor person talking, and this video window is showing footage that's actually happening off screen somewhere. Now that's a beautiful trick. Now here's the thing. Back when we were using videotape, that would cost you about $100,000 to do. And the reason I say that is because there was a machine, the one that we had was called an ADO system, Ampex Digital Optics, and it cost a huge price tag. And what it would do is nothing more than taking a video that you put into it, shrinking it down, and applying it as a key. And so it was very complicated to use, very difficult to set up, and very expensive. And so, therefore, if you walk into an edit suite and say, can we do that picture-in-picture thing? If you can do it, they'd say, well, not in this room. That was probably what they would say. Not in this room you can't. We can do that upstairs, though, but that'll cost you $500 an hour. You sure you want to do it? And so, guess what, folks? Now it's free. How about that? Now you can do it right here. And so you get to use a tool that used to cost $500 an hour. Amazing, isn't it? And so you can have floating screens and animations. And guess what, folks? The ADO could only do 1 or 2 of these things. You can do 20. And you don't have to take the video down a generation. It's perfect stuff. As many layers as you want. Okay, now the stream of the keys. This is important to understand how the keys work in terms of what we call the stream. Now, an upstream key means something is below principal photography. There's your weatherman, there's the weather map. And so you're cutting through the weatherman to the weather map. It happens before we get to principal. So it's upstream. It's ahead of it, or behind it, rather. However you want to look at it. And so downstream is something that happens after. So there's your weather person. There is the name tag. That's what we're seeing above. That's keyed in front of or after the principal. Principal photography, upstream, downstream. And upstream is the weather map, as we said. Downstream is the graphic logo of the anchor. And everything is upstream or downstream of something else. It's a relative position. So that's important to understand as well. You can change this by moving things around, which, by the way, you could never do back in the old times with videotape, because I had to do that once. Someone said, that downstream keyer, we want to use it upstream. And so I'd have to get in back of the system and move wires around to try to see if I was able to do that. And that took me a couple hours to figure that out. Now you can just move things up or down on the timeline, which we'll demonstrate. Okay, so here we are in the Adobe Premiere program. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and make a new project, and we'll do this relatively quickly. And so here we get the dialog box like we had before. I'm going to type the word keying because I'm going to do this as a project having to do with keying. And I'm going to put this project, and again, this is kind of inside baseball. I'm putting it on an external drive because this is where I'm doing the streaming. And so I'm putting it into this particular class folder, and I'm going to make a new folder for it. I'm going to call this keying. Oh, there's already one called keying. So I will just put that in there and select the folder. And so there we are. And so I'm just going to hit OK. And here is basically what we get. We got the program monitor here We've got the project window here. This is the timeline window. And right now there's nothing in it, so we're going to put something in it. And so I'm going to do some relatively simple stuff here. So I'm going to import a picture. Now I'm going to import some flying pictures. So I'm going to grab one of these shots here, just to show you how the editing process works. Now the moment I do that, it shows up here. I'm going to take that. I'm just going to take and just, sometimes for some reason it gives you a hard time. You got to grab it by the right area. I'm going to drop it in there, and then suddenly it's in the timeline. And so when it's in the timeline, I can drag this around. And so you'll see what the image is doing. You'll also notice we've got our waveform monitor here and our vector scope, which you can't really see all that well. So the first thing I'm going to do is find where I want the shot to begin. So I'm just going to hit the little play button here. And right now you can see the drone is sitting on a concrete steps there. Now the drone is taking off. And I'm pretty sure that most of this is not going to be particularly useful until we get something that is. And so I'm just going to skip ahead and see where it goes. All right, so this is kind of nice. This is kind of nice. We're going over the soccer field. But I really want to see the campus, so I'm going to take it to the point there where the drone turns around and comes back. So here we have the drone turning around. There's the campus, and we're going to come towards the campus now. So wait till it gets a position, and then I start bringing it back. Okay, so I'm going to stop it right there, and I'm just going to get rid of all this stuff because I don't need this. Remember, this is a video file. I'm going to hit the C button on the keyboard, so I got the razor blade. I'm going to put a chop there. Then I'm going to hit the V button, which turns it back into a pointer. I select that. I delete it. And then I'm going to highlight that area, right-hand click, ripple delete. And so this is where the shot begins. And so that's fine. In fact, what I'll even do is I'll go over here to video transitions and I'll put a dissolve in there. I'll just take a cross dissolve, drop it right there at the beginning. So now, if I hit play, you'll see we've got this dissolve here. Very nice. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to put a graphic over that. Now, for the purposes of this class, we'll do a real simple one. I'm going to show you a couple of ways of doing it using a very versatile tool, but not my favorite tool. So I'm just going to be honest with you here. This is limited, but for a beginner, it is very much worth noting. So we're going to go to File, New, and under New, I'm going to choose Legacy Title. Now, Legacy Title is the original titling tool that came with Adobe. To be honest, I don't think their new one is as good. I find this easier to use, and it's self-contained. And I could be wrong on that, but this is the one I'm showing you. And so I'm going to call this title, I'm just going to call it MUI. Just I on MU or something like that. Doesn't really matter what I call it. And then I get this. Now I want to show you some of the weaknesses of Adobe because Adobe has them, and usually, they're easy enough to overcome, but you have to understand one of the problems with Adobe is that they simply cannot stop overwhelming you with their tools. They just don't know how to organize them properly, and so you get these windows that are so overloaded that you can't get started. And here it's even worse because this isn't one window, it's three of them. And so here is the case in point. I want to basically write a title, and I'm going to start with something basic. So I'm going to hit the little T tool. That's perfectly all right. Then I'm going to draw a box. What you do is your right-hand click, or left-hand click rather, draw a box, then you've got your cursor. And I'm going to put I, next line, on MU. So how about that? Nice little caption there. And then I'm going to highlight it so that I can change it. And here, first of all, I can choose any font that I want. And so let's see if we can find one that's good. And they really hide that little, I don't know what you call that on the slider bar. But let's just look for, how about something simple? Well, maybe not simple. Let's try this one because here we can, well, no, that looks bad. All right, let's try something else. So I'm just going to go with impact because you can't really get less impactful than that. Even though, of course, if I were doing MU branding, that probably wouldn't work. And I can choose from here to make that regular. It doesn't have a bold function. It gives a few other possibilities, but not here. So pretty much impact is impact. It is what you get. But that's okay for what we're doing. And of course, this is a two-dimensional font. Now what I can do is I can make it larger by doing that. And right now, if it gets beyond the boundary box, it will roll over. So we don't want to do that. But what I want to do, I want to center it. Still no problem. So centering I on MU. And again, that's centering within the dialog box. But the first thing that I want to do is change the color. You would think that would be up here. It isn't. It's down here. Now, this is the part that I wanted to show you that will hopefully demystify Adobe from now on. If I go to the edge of this box, I can control how big this is as a floating window. But notice what's happening with those other, actually, 1, 2, 3, 4 boxes on the bottom. They're getting mashed together, and that's getting ridiculous. So what I want to see, believe it or not, is this little tiny one over here. So in order to get there, I have to move this one over. So I'm just going to push that one over, and we're still not getting very far, so I'm going to have to stretch this like this, and this begins to make sense. So now we can see what's in this one. And color is all the way down here. So right now the color is white, we understand that. If I click on this, on the white square, I get the rainbow. So I can choose maybe a yellow. I can do that. Let's see what that would look like. I on MU. It's good because it's visible. We'll go with that. Now also there we have the ability to put a shadow in place. So I'm going to check the shadow box, and I will have that as a dark shadow. I'm going to make it a little bit more opaque, and I'm going to make it 100% opaque just so you can see it, or 99%. And right now, distance may not be perfect. Size, let's make it a little bit bigger. And you can begin to see that now. So it does update real time. And you can, let's say we go with something along those lines. So I on MU, and it's in the center there. And you know what? I've changed my mind. I don't want it centered anymore. What I want to do rather is I want to customize it a bit. So I'm going to go back to left-hand justified. Then I'm just going to, heaven forbid, use the space bar to move those around. And it's not really perfect, but for what we're doing, I think it's fine. And so there we have a graphic. And so I'm going to close this window because we don't need it anymore. And you might notice we've got something added to our project window, and that is the graphic. Now if I double click on that, I get the window back again. And so if I want to use this graphic, I can drag it over into the timeline. Now here's where it gets interesting. Notice I can put that over here, and if I'm looking at it, I'm going to the end of the drone footage, which we don't want. Suddenly it comes up right there. But what I want to do rather is I want to put that right here in the beginning, and I want that to come up right away. Now notice it works. And I'm going to make the program window just a little bit bigger so we can get a better look at this. And I'll put it up here. And what's happening is, as a single graphic, it just shoots right on there. Now notice, if I were to put it over here, where there is no background, it looks like it has a black background. But that's because whatever is not the letters, including the alpha channel, basically just gets washed away. So here, we've got a nice, perfectly alpha channel graphic. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to tailor it. And so we're going to fade up, and at about the, I'm going to take it a little sooner, about the 1 second mark, maybe a little earlier. I'm going to, instead of having it punch on, maybe a little bit further away, I'm going to go back to my video transitions, and I'm going to put a dissolve there. So I'm going to put a cross dissolve, this time on this one. Oh, got to make sure it takes. So we'll try that one again. Yeah, there it goes. And so if you drag the pointer across, you see that that comes up. You can even see it on the waveform and vector scope, how it does that. And right now, if I were to play this real time by hitting the space bar, you see INMU, and there it is. And then it just goes away. Now, I could make it longer. I can just grab that endpoint and extend it out a bit, and then I could basically decide I wanted to fade out from there. And so this would be the opening shot. And so we're here, INMU, and that is a layered graphic which is going over, and then it fades out. Okay, so at this point, we could do any number of other things. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to introduce a different graphic. So we have this graphic here, which is already part of the scene, and I'm going to add another one. So if I go to File, Import, and I'm going to choose one of these. So I have here, well, let's start with this one. So this is just now it's added to the bin here, or the project window. And if I drag that over here, watch what happens. Notice it goes over that graphic. Now, of course, this has some problems, and we'll fix some of them. If we actually wanted to see this, we probably want to make it bigger. So if I highlight that clip, and I have to move this so that you can see, we have our effects controls. And so if I go to scale, for example, as long as that's highlighted, I can scale it up, make it larger. And I can also move it. So for example, I can position it using the left and right, up and down, up here. Now that alone is quite amazing. Now I could also knock out the white, but it would be easier if I had a graphic that didn't already have that in there. So right now I'm just using this as a demonstration. So what I'm going to do is I'm literally going to keep the white, and I want to make this so that it's basically covering the entire new graphic. I'm temporarily going to use that as a background image. I'm going to say, well, background image, well, shouldn't it be behind it? Yes, it should. And so the question is, how in the world would I get it to do that? Well, all I'd have to do is go down here, take this layer, and move it up to there. Voila, there it is. So all I've done is basically said, guess what? I'm going to add another layer because this layer wasn't even there before. And so now suddenly, I think comes up like this. Now, of course, the logo snaps up and then the INMU comes up. So if I wanted to work on that, I could just take my cross dissolve and do that. So it all comes up at the same time, and I could stretch that to fit, and then I could basically drop that like that, and there you go. And so, and that looks so awful that I'm not even going to consider keeping that. I'm just going to hit the delete button and make it go away. How about it? So I could also then go to File, Imports, and I'm still in the same place. I could take one of these instead. If I wanted to do roughly the same thing, I could take that, take my logo there, and I could put it there, and actually, that's a good example. I deleted the wrong graphics, so if I go boom, undo, 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 and then this time I get rid of the right graphic, and then I take, well, just import it again. Take that one, and this time I've got a choice. Do I put it above or below? All right, now it's below, I think, and that's actually pretty good. So let's just go ahead and do the same thing we did before and see how that looks. And so there it is, and it kind of works. It works better at least, but not good enough yet. So we're going to do a couple of things on that to make that a little bit better before we move on. And one of them is, I don't want to lose too much of the image. So what I'm going to do is on that level, I am going to take my opacity down. Opacity is how opaque it is. So if I take that down just a little bit, you can see that it's better. In fact, you almost lose the borders there. In fact, I kind of want to lose those borders. And so we're going to start right like that. And I'm going to ignore the fact that the letters are kind of going over the logo, because obviously we wouldn't do that. But what I want to do is I want to lose some of those borders too. So I'm going to add an effect. Fortunately, the effects are easy enough to understand. I'm going to go to Video Effects. And all I'm going to do is go to Transform. And there is an effect called Crop. So I'm going to drag Crop over this one, because that's the one we're working on. Now suddenly we have a different group of things that we can do. And so I am just going to take my left-hand crop and bring it in like that. So crop it right till it gets to the logo. Then I'm going to crop the right side till it gets to the logo. And then I'm going to crop the bottom. And then I'm going to crop the top. Oh, did I miss it? Crop the top. Top. And let's see if we can add some edge feathering. Edge feathering. Ah, how about that? Perfect. Okay, so in fact, that is so good that I am just going to go back to this original graphic, which is MUI, and I'm going to modify that whole graphic. So I'm going to go back here, and I no longer want to do this like this. I'm going to just basically take it up here, and I'm going to basically write it like this. I on MU, and that's actually going to be enough. So notice that's changed now. And I'm going to go to the Ion MU, and I'm going to position that upwards. Or I can position it downwards. Okay. So that's actually not bad. So that's closer to being ideal. Not perfect, but it's good enough. Okay, so I want to do one other thing, which may turn this whole thing on its head. I want to import another video. And so I'm going to import a video that has a green screen component. Now we're not going to bother with audio on this, but here it is, a video with a green screen component. And so here we have a person talking in front of a green screen. And so what I'd like to do is I would like to have him talking in front of this. And so that will layer this with this. And we can even extend these over on top. So right now, we're looking at this person with a green screen in the background. And so I want to then punch that green out. And it's actually so easy to do that I'm just going to show you how easy it is. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to the video effects, because that's where it would be. And I find keying. Oh, hi, how you doing? I'll be down in a minute. And I find keying, and in the keying area, I'm going to go to Ultra Key. And I'm going to put Ultra Key in there, and now suddenly I have those options over here. And key color, and it's so simple it's ridiculous. I'm going to grab the eyedropper, and I'm just going to hit that green, and look what happens. Just gets knocked right out. And so then, and I could bring him in at that point, and then of course I could go back to transitions and go to the dissolve, and I can dissolve him in. And so he can be talking about Methodist University. And if I want to make it even crazier, well, first of all, I could, let's say I just want to extend these out so they cover him a little bit. So here, he's coming in. Now, obviously, you wouldn't do that, but I'm just showing you that you can. And then, if I wanted to, I can just bring in one more clip. And I'm just going to grab something at random. And so what this is this is a video about how to fly a drone. I'm just going to stick that up here as well. Now notice this is already wrong because it's not the same size as the video. This is a lower definition video than that one. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab this and I'm just going to scale it down yet more. And then I'm just going to move this over here and up there. And I'm going to do a cross dissolve to bring that in. So now we have that, and so we've got more than one video there, and you can match the audio any way you want. We're not doing audio today, but I'm just showing you that you can. And maybe since we're already going crazy, if I were to import something else, and that could be anything, I'll just grab this thing, whatever this is. And if I just drag that in here and lay that on top as well, and so that's, whatever that is, it's a piece of a movie. And so I'm just going to go there and I'm going to scale that down as well. And you see I can stack that over here. And so, and I'm just curious to see if the computer will be able to handle this. So I'm just going to hit play. And you can see that all this stuff is happening. So far, the computer is playing 3 streams of video. Now we're going to add a 4th. And it's playing it.
My name is Gary Ross. Going on? So today,
and so now we got another video coming in. And a 3rd video coming in.
Get up and get flying.
Okay, so this is just obviously playing around. This isn't serious. But this is how you can add layers upon layers upon layers, and I think I have covered everything. So there you are. This is keying, and so I want you to continue doing not the scavenger hunt assignment, but the editing assignment, and if you can, try to find a way to at least key graphics. Try to find a way to do that much at least, so that you get an idea how this works.